Do best. Breaking news. We have some right now for all of you. There's been more on that gunfire erupting at the office of the French Satirical magazine that we just told you about. Now, you might remember this was the target of an attack several years ago in response to the cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad. So for more on this breaking news and what's going on at this hour, let's go straight to Jim Bitterman. He is live in Paris. What do we know, Jim?
Allison, basically this is the third attack on this magazine over the last 10 years or so, and we're not exactly sure on the details. What's apparently happened is that this morning 2 gunmen masked and wearing black broke in to the headquarters of the newspaper, which is located near the Bastille district in Paris, and started firing with automatic weapons. The firing went on for about 5 minutes. Now, we don't have confirmation of this, but according to a police union spokesman, there may be as many as 10 people who are dead. Now, again, we don't have any confirmation of this, but the police union spokesman said it was a real butchery, that in fact the shooting went on for a long time. Some of the employees and some of the editors of the newspaper went to the roof to find sanctuary there, and the shooting went on, like I say, for about 4 or 5 minutes. The prosecutor, the Paris prosecutor, is on his way to the scene now, as is the Interior Minister. So I think it's a fairly serious situation. We should have more in the coming hours. Allison?
Jim, were there threats against this magazine this time around?
Well, there have been for some time. I mean, this newspaper is known for its very daring kind of satiric humor, and they have had all sorts of covers and whatnot that have been very controversial. It's very anti-religion of every sort. They've made fun of Catholics and Jews, but also most notably Islam, and published several photos of Muhammad, or rather drawings of Muhammad, and that over the years has gotten them into trouble, including a firebomb attack in 2011. Police surveillance had been fairly tight around the newspaper until recently, but a journalist just said this morning that in fact some of that police surveillance had been withdrawn in the last few weeks. So it's not clear that there were any policemen around when this attack happened this morning, Allison.
Well, Jim, it's also important in understanding why this may have happened. The evolving situation you have in France with Islam, especially the extremist factions of the community, not just in the country, but specifically in Paris, North Paris. Any connection so far to that?
Well, no connection so far, but the fact is, yes. I mean, in fact, about 10% of the population in France is of the Muslim religion, and there has been a problem over the last year or so that's been noted by authorities here about young Muslims being drawn into the conflict in the Middle East and being radicalized. We saw a video just fairly recently, a couple of weeks ago, that showed some of the young Muslims from France who were involved in the beheadings that were taking place in the ISIS areas of Iraq. So it's something that authorities have been quite concerned about. And it should be said, too, that they are quite concerned that some of those folks who had been trained up in the Middle East might come back to France and perpetrate attacks here. So we don't have anything to connect this morning's action with that, but that's certainly the kind of thing that authorities have been worried about.
Jim, we know that you don't have confirmation yet of how many people were killed inside. Do you know how many people were at work there today?
Well, it was a normal working day. It's a weekly newspaper. They were apparently in the middle of their editorial meeting this morning, conversing with the various editors and cartoonists who are involved with the newspaper. It's unclear at this time how many people might have been there, but one can imagine that they have a staff around 50 or 60 people all told, that a good part of those people were there for the meetings this morning.
But Jim, also to be clear, just in terms of what we're dealing with here, this wasn't just an open assault on this office where they were all victimless. We understand that police were also involved in this, and it turned into a firefight. Is that true?
Well, in fact, there were apparently, again, we have no confirmation of this, there may have been 2 police officers who were wounded while they were trying to pursue the gunman. But as I said, mentioned earlier, one journalist told BFM, our sister network here, that in fact the police surveillance of this newspaper had been somewhat drawn down in recent weeks. So it's not clear how many police may have been in the area. Up until that point, the newspaper had been under 24/7 surveillance with a truckload of police out front every day. So it's not clear how many police might have been there this morning, but according to one journalist who was across the street from the newspaper, he said that, in fact, recently the number of police surveilling the offices had been withdrawn.
Jim, we're just getting the latest bulletin from the police there. They say that at least one journalist has been killed. 3 police officers, they say, were wounded during this shooting at the newspaper, as you're saying. 2 heavily armed gunmen entered the newspaper's headquarters, opened fire inside the building. The Paris mayor's office says at least 6 people were wounded. Those are the latest numbers that we're getting, unless you're hearing something different.
No, I think that's probably the latest that we've got. And in fact, we have the prosecutor and the interior minister of France on his way to the scene right now. And I suspect once they get on the scene, we're going to see some announcements coming that will clarify the situation. Until then, I think it'll probably trickle out bit by bit. But as I mentioned, a police union spokesman told our colleagues at BFM television here in France that, in fact, he thought that as many as 10 people may have been killed, and that it was a real butchery inside, that the gunman had opened up fire and continued firing for about 5 minutes.
All right, Jim, we're just starting to get the latest round of reporting on this. We'll let you get back to work there on the ground. Let us know what you find out, and we will round up all the details. This is obviously a developing situation. There has been a gun assault in France on a literary magazine there, a well-known satirical magazine. People were at work. The latest numbers we have that it involved 2 heavily armed gunmen. A journalist has possibly been killed. 3 police officers have been injured in trying to deal with the situation. There was pursuit involved. We're getting details, and we're going to come back to you after the break with the latest on this situation in Paris. Stay with us.
Also,